Good morning to everyone, and thank you all for having joined us today. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Ariel Zaltzman, and I'm the IDB's Fiscal Management Specialist in the Dominican Republic. I'm really excited to be participating in this webinar with all of you today. As my colleagues Carola and Leslie have already mentioned, in our first panel this morning, we'll be hearing about two very interesting examples of how public procurement has been made more inclusive of LGBT businesses in the US. Our first speaker is Justin Nelson, who will share with us the experience of the US National LGBT Chamber of Commerce Business Certification Program. Justin is the co-founder and president of the NGLCC, which is the largest LGBT economic advocacy and business development organization in the world, and also it's the exclusive private sector certifying body for LGBT-owned businesses in the US. Our second speaker is Casey Brent, who will be sharing with us the experience of the state of Maryland's Inclusive Procurement Program. Casey is currently the Director of Consumer Affairs for the Maryland Public Service Commission, where she oversees the agency's complaint process, utility compliance and enforcement arm, as well as the supplier diversity program. We asked Justin and Casey to please limit their presentations to 10 minutes so that we have a few minutes left for questions and answers before it's time to begin our second panel. With all that, having said all that, thank you very much for your attention, and I'd like to turn it over to Justin now. Thank you.
Hola, bienvenidos a todos y muchos bienvenidos a mis amigos, los líderes.
Hello and welcome to all, and welcome to all the members from the Chambers of LGBT Commerce in Uruguay, Dominican Republic, Adrian Russo and Jimmy Gonzalez.
In today's program, I want to give a special thank you to Leslie Harper with IDB and Erasmo Sanchez, the director of NGLCC Global here at my organization, for their work in putting this event together today. We are very excited to be here, and I just want to share a little bit of background on who we are at NGLCC. You heard a little bit about it in the intro from Ariel, but let me just share, we're the direct link between businesses, government, and corporations, and we are the exclusive certifying body for LGBT businesses. So in essence, we play the role of matchmaker between LGBT-owned companies and those seeking to do business with those companies in the procurement world. We do a lot of advocacy on economic inclusion of LGBT people and businesses in our state, local, and national economies. We're now over 60 affiliate chambers in the US and internationally, broken down by 50 here in the US and 18 globally. We have nearly 300 corporate partners. These are Fortune 500 multinational partners that are looking to do business with our suppliers, not despite the fact that they're LGBT owned, but because they're LGBT owned. So let's just do a level set for many of you on the call. You may not be familiar with what supplier diversity is. This is a very basic definition of what a program does. It's a proactive program to include minority owned, women owned, veteran, LGBT, disability, and any other underutilized businesses as deemed appropriate by our U.S. Small Business Administration. You heard a little of this from Carola and from Leslie in terms of why it's important. It ranges from social responsibility to the bottom line. In the U.S., we have a saying, because our money is green in color, that you might not get black or white or gay or straight, but everybody gets the green. And so when we talk about economics, oftentimes individuals that may not be with us on issues of equality, their ears perk up and they start to listen a little bit more closely, because we are talking about issues of the bottom line. And of course, it makes these companies and governments that participate leaders in public and private sector in the global marketplace. This just shows you, again, I mentioned that we had nearly 300 Fortune 500 companies, and many of these companies are very active in Latin America, companies like Citibank, MasterCard, Delta Airlines, IBM, EY, Accenture, companies like Facebook, Google, General Motors. These are all companies that are buying back from LGBT owned businesses. And while supplier diversity has largely been a U.S. Program, most of these companies are now looking outwardly into countries where they have major operations and how they can mimic their supplier diversity programs in those parts of the world, inclusive of LGBT suppliers. So that's why today's program, I think, is so vitally important. These are just a few of the places where we actually have had public sector wins, where businesses have where we have been able to include LGBT suppliers in the public sector procurement. And you'll see a lot of cities on here that have large Latinx populations, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Chicago. We're very excited that literally just last week, we won inclusion in Miami for LGBT-owned businesses to compete on taxpayer-funded contracts. And why is it important? I think it's important. Let's look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. And when we're looking at how we empower people through economics, how do we ensure that individuals, whether they're LGBT or another diverse category, have the ability to provide for themselves, their families, their employees? These are all important issues, no matter where you are in the world. And so we commissioned a study in 2017. We were looking to do our second iteration this year. Obviously, the coronavirus has impacted that. But we did do this study in 2017 because we wanted to show what the impact of procurement and LGBT-owned businesses was on our U.S. economy. And so there are an estimated 1.4 million LGBT-owned businesses in the United States. And we found through our study done by Whittick Communications that our 1.4 million LGBT businesses have a combined economic impact of $1 trillion on the U.S. economy. That's an annual impact of $1.7 trillion on our economy. And to put that on the map, if you will, if we were our own country, that would make the LGBT business community in the United States the 10th largest economy in the world. And you can't not think about inclusion and trade and partnership with the 10th largest economy in the world. This was done with a market size or a test group of just under 1,000 businesses. But even in that test group of 900 plus, we found that those companies were responsible for nearly 2.6 billion just themselves in activity to the U.S. economy, with an average income of around $2.4 million, which is incredibly important. Now, there is a large scale of diversity within the revenues. They go from, on the low end, of about $21,000 all the way up to nearly $200 million in annual revenues. And I think the important thing to point out here, too, is what is an LGBT business? It really is a slice of small business. You know, we have companies that are in waste management, aerospace, construction, marketing, PR, communications, everything. Every particular industry, you can find an LGBT-owned business. So to think that they're all sequestered to nightclubs or hair salons or flower shops is really an antiquated idea. LGBT-owned businesses really run the gamut in terms of what kind of product or service they provide. And then again, just looking at this sample size of 917, 33,000 jobs created out of just our sample size. Why is that important? Why should that be important to governments, not only my own here in the United States or our state and local governments, but governments around the world? It's about employment and the ability of LGBT businesses to be able to employ other LGBT people, other people is incredibly important. And to do that, they have to find ways of being able to continue to grow their revenues and their impact. And we do that through our supplier diversity program, again, working with roughly close to 300 Fortune 500 companies. A couple of things we're very proud of. We launched our NGLCC Global Program back in 2011. We partnered with the U.S. Agency for International Development to help launch chambers of commerce throughout Latin America. That has now grown to Europe, to South Africa, India, and Japan. There are a lot of amazing things in terms of being able to work with diverse suppliers from across the globe, because now we're looking at not only doing business with a company in the next city or the next state, but really around the globe, and that goes both ways. So for LGBT companies, they're able to team up with a US-based LGBT-owned company and respond to RFPs, requests for proposals for larger business that they may be able to bid on for a multinational corporation. And so I just want to stress for those of you on the finding out if we have an affiliate in your country, you can visit www.nglcc.org. We have an affiliate tab there. There's a list of our global affiliates as well. And our global team is always willing to talk with you about strategizing on how to present this as a business case within your country. That's what we have done. We have built this on a business case. Yes, there's a case to be made for marginalization and underutilization, but we have been able to achieve that large number of economic impact based on how we empower diverse communities to be full functioning parts of our economy and not be reliant on government dollars to exist and pay for day-to-day life necessities. So we've had a great deal of success. Again, nearly 300 corporate partners. We're in 18 countries, many of them throughout Latin America. We have a certification program that mirrors what we have here in the US for women, ethnic minorities, that a business is 51% owned, operated, and controlled by an LGBT person or persons. And that is something we're working with our global affiliates on to ensure we have a global registry ready, willing, and able of businesses that can contract not only with our hundreds of multinational companies, but ideally with the governments in their very own countries and in their cities. So I'm going to pause there, and I know that we're going to hear from our good friend Casey in Maryland, who is one of those states that has a program of inclusion that we've worked with to ensure LGBT businesses can bid there. So thank you again for taking up this important issue, and we look forward to working with any one of you that would like our assistance in helping move this initiative further throughout Latin America. Thank you.